Imagine spending your whole life feeling like nobody sees you, until one day millions do. This is how going from invisible to unforgettable changed everything. For years, I was the background friend, the one people forgot to tag in. Photos? The voice that got talked over. I convinced myself I wasn't meant to be seen until a single moment forced the world to look. This isn't just about a billboard. It's about what happens when you stop waiting for permission to matter. If you've ever felt overlooked, smash the like button, because this story is for you. And subscribe so you never miss videos about turning pain into power. Invisibility isn't just about being ignored. It's the slow erasure of your confidence. You start believing you're not supposed to take up space. The childhood fade away. From the very beginning, I learned how easy it was to disappear. It wasn't dramatic, just a slow, quiet erosion. In school, teachers would scan the room, their eyes gliding right past me like I was made of glass. Even when I raised my hand, they'd call on someone louder, someone brighter, as if my voice didn't carry weight. At home, it was the same. Family gatherings were a chorus of overlapping stories, and every time I opened my mouth, the conversation would shift, leaving my words hanging in the air unclaimed. Photos told the real story, cropped out of frames, tucked behind others, or just missing altogether. I wasn't the kid who got lost in the crowd. I was the one the crowd never noticed to begin with. The message was clear. I wasn't remarkable enough to remember, and the worst part, I believed it. I started shrinking before anyone could tell me to. I'd sit in the back, speak in whispers, dress in colors that didn't draw attention. It wasn't just about being shy. It was about survival. If I made myself small enough, maybe the sting of being overlooked would hurt less. But it didn't. It just made the world confirm what I already feared, that I wasn't worth seeing. Even simple things like roll call became a test. The pause before my name, the slight hesitation, the way the teacher's brow would furrow like they were searching for a ghost. And when they finally said it, it wasn't recognition. It was a question. Like my existence was up for debate. I used to think invisibility was a superpower, but it's not. It's a slow suffocation. You start to wonder if you're even real. If people don't see you, do you exist at all? That's the cruelest trick of being the invisible one. You don't vanish suddenly. You're erased one unnoticed moment at a time, until you forget what it feels like to be seen. And the scariest part? You stop expecting anyone to look. The lunch table syndrome. The cafeteria was where I learned how easily people forget you exist. Every day, the same ritual. Hovering near groups with my tray, waiting for an invitation that never came. I'd watch as chairs were pulled in, spaces saved for others, while I became background noise. The worst wasn't being rejected. It was being overlooked entirely. That moment when you finally sit down and realize no one notices you've joined them. Conversations would continue right through me, as if I was just empty space wearing a face. The laughter, the inside jokes, the plans being made, none of it included me, not because I was excluded, but because I simply wasn't considered. I perfected the art of the invisible eater, chewing quietly, laughing at jokes no one told to me, nodding along to stories I wasn't part of. The, "Oh, I forgot you were here," comments were meant to be friendly, but each one carved deeper. After a while, I stopped trying to contribute. My opinions stayed unspoken, my stories untold. Why risk the polite nods that quickly turned back to more interesting topics? The lunch table became a metaphor for my entire existence. Physically, present. Emotionally irrelevant. I'd watch the clock, counting down minutes until I could escape to the bathroom stall where at least my solitude was intentional. The cruelest part? No one was being malicious. They weren't actively trying to hurt me. That's what made it so devastating. My absence wouldn't disturb anything. My presence didn't improve anything. I was interchangeable with empty air. Years later, I'd realize this was where I first learned to mute myself, to make my needs smaller so others could be more comfortable. The lunch table didn't just teach me about loneliness. It taught me how to disappear gracefully, How to take up so little space that no one would ever need to ask me to move. The art that stayed hidden. The pages of my notebooks held what my voice never could. Poems about loneliness written in margins, short stories folded into perfect squares, drawings hidden beneath textbook covers. Creativity became my secret language, one I never expected anyone to understand. Every time inspiration struck, a war would rage inside me. The words begged to be shared, but fear always won. Who would care became my mantra. The shower became my concert hall, car rides my poetry slam, midnight pillow mumbles my TED Talk. I created entire universes that only existed in the dark, where rejection couldn't touch them. My bedroom walls were papered with paintings I'd immediately cover, with posters terrified someone might see and ask the dangerous question, "Why do you hide this?" The answer was simple. It hurt less to choose invisibility than to risk being ignored. I'd watch classmates receive praise for work half as good as what I threw away, thinking, if they knew, would it matter? The real tragedy wasn't that no one saw my art. It was that I'd started believing it didn't deserve to be seen. Each crumpled poem, each deleted recording, each painted-over canvas was another piece of myself I deemed unworthy. The notebooks piled up under my bed like archaeological layers of everything I could have been, but was too afraid to become. I told myself it didn't hurt, that creating was enough, but the truth lingered in every hesitant pencil stroke. Art needs witnesses. My greatest masterpiece was the performance of someone with nothing to show, nothing to say. Years later, I'd realized those hidden pages were never just art. They were bottled screams, love letters to a version of myself too, afraid to come out. But back then, they were just more evidence that what mattered most to me mattered least to everyone else. The turning point. The internet became my accidental confessional, a place where I could whisper into the void without seeing who might be listening. That night I posted my writing online not for praise, but because the weight of keeping it to myself had become unbearable. The words sat there for days, unnoticed, exactly as I'd expected. Then came the notification that would crack my world open. "Your words feel like my soul talking." A complete stranger had seen me, really seen me, in ways the people who'd known me for years never had. Their message wasn't just kind, it was specific, quoting lines back to me that I'd nearly deleted in embarrassment. Suddenly, the art I'd treated as worthless had become someone else's lifeline. I read their words over and over, tracing the letters with disbelieving fingers. This wasn't the polite encouragement of an obligated friend or the vague nice job from a disinterested teacher. This was proof that what I created could matter to someone who owed me nothing. That single comment unraveled years of conditioning. Maybe I wasn't invisible because I lacked talent, but because I'd been showing myself to the wrong people. The stranger didn't know they were handing me a key to my own cage. For the first time, I considered a terrifying possibility. What if the problem wasn't my voice, but where I'd been trying to make it heard? Their words became the pebble that started the avalanche, making me question every assumption I'd built about my place in the world. That night I dug out old notebooks from under my bed, reading my abandoned words with new eyes. Each page contained evidence that I'd had something to say all along. I'd just been waiting for permission to say it out loud. The stranger would never know they'd changed everything with 8 simple words, but their message became the bridge between the person I was and the person I might dare to become. The reckless decision. The contest submission page glared at me like an unblinking eye, the cursor pulsing in the empty field where my name should go. Every logical thought screamed to close the tab. Who was I to think my writing belonged alongside real artists? But that stranger's comment echoed in my mind, mixing with years of stifled creativity into a dangerous cocktail of defiance. I typed "probably not your type" as the subject line, a preemptive strike against rejection. Hitting send felt less like an act of courage and more like self-sabotage. If I expected failure, It couldn't hurt me. The confirmation email might as well have read, "Your humiliation has been scheduled." For days, I oscillated between hoping they'd ignore it and praying they'd see something worthwhile. The submission wasn't about winning. It was about proving to myself I could survive putting my art into the world. I'd armored myself with every possible excuse. The judges were biased, the contest was rigged, my work wasn't commercial enough. What I hadn't prepared for was silence. Weeks passed with no response, and the gnawing realization set in. I'd rather have been rejected than forgotten again. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday while scrubbing a coffee stain from my desk, the notification arrived. My first thought wasn't excitement. It was terror. They'd made a mistake. They'd confused me with someone else. They were about to realize their error and rescind whatever polite rejection they'd sent. My hand shook opening that email, not from hope, but from the visceral fear that this fleeting acknowledgement would vanish like all the others. That moment contained a truth I wasn't ready to face. It's easier to live with constant invisibility than to risk being seen and then disregarded. The submission had been reckless not because it might fail, but because it might not. And success would force me to reconsider everything I believed about my place in the world. The email that didn't make sense. The subject line, Times Square feature opportunity, looked like spam, the kind of too-good-to-be-true scam that preys on desperate artists. I nearly deleted it, but something made me click. The words didn't compute at first. Your submission perfectly captures our campaign's theme of overlooked voices. My brain short-circuited. They wanted my face, my ordinary, forgettable face, on a billboard in the most visible place on earth. The irony burned like acid. Me, who couldn't get classmates to remember my name, being asked to represent something? I laughed until it turned into something closer to a panic attack. This had to be a cruel joke or a case of mistaken identity. I reread the email 20 times, searching for the catch, the hidden fee, the moment they'd say, "Just kidding." But the details only became more real. The dates, the contract, the creative director's signature. My hands went numb scrolling through the campaign materials. They weren't just using my writing, they wanted to photograph me staring directly at the camera, unflinching like someone who belonged in the spotlight. The version of me in their mood board wasn't the shrinking Violet I recognized. She was bold, unapologetic, visible. My reflection in the laptop screen looked suddenly foreign. Could I even make that face? The email contained another devastating line. We chose you because your work articulates what so many feel, but can't express. That's when the tears came. Not happy tears, but the kind that comes when truth hits too hard. All those years of feeling invisible, and they were paying me to own it. The cruelest part? The world would finally see me, but only because I'd learned to articulate my own erasure so perfectly. I sat there paralyzed between two terrifying truths. This opportunity validated everything I'd ever created, and it would force me to stop hiding forever. The secret trip to NYC. I booked the train ticket under a fake name, not because I was being dramatic, but because saying it out loud would make it real. The morning of the shoot, I dressed in the bathroom with the lights off like I was committing a crime. Every step toward Penn Station felt like walking against gravity, my body physically resisting what my mind couldn't process. What if they took one look at me and realized their mistake? The photographer would see right through me. This wasn't a face meant for billboards, but someone who belonged in the background, quiet and unnoticed. The studio was all white walls and confident, people who moved like they owned space, while I hovered near the snack table calculating how fast I could escape. When the makeup artist touched my face, I flinched. No one had ever paid that much attention to my features before. The camera's first click startled me like a gunshot. "Relax your shoulders," they kept saying, but tension was the only language. My body spoke. Then something shifted. Between the fourth and fifth take, I stopped seeing the lens as judgment and started seeing it as just glass. The creative director said, "Show us the person who wrote those words." And for the first time I understood. They didn't want a model. They wanted the real, messy, invisible me. By the final shot, I wasn't posing anymore. I was just existing, fully in a way I never had before. Walking out, I expected relief, but instead felt this terrifying exhilaration, like I'd gotten away with something. The secret wasn't just that I'd done the shoot. The secret was that part of me had liked being seen. I rode the subway home, clutching the test prints to my chest, both terrified and electrified by what I held. Proof that I could occupy space and not apologize for it. The moment, everything stopped. Times Square at night is sensory overload. Few flashing lights, jostling crowds. The constant hum of too much life crammed into one place. I arrived 2 hours early just to prepare, standing frozen at the edge of the chaos like someone about to jump into freezing water. When the clock ticked closer, my hands started shaking so badly I had to stuff them in my pockets. Then suddenly, there it was, my own face 30 feet tall, blinking to life between ads for Broadway shows and global brands. The strangest part wasn't seeing myself up there, but hearing strangers react. "Who's that?" someone asked, and another answered, "Must be someone important." A tourist took a selfie with my image like I was a landmark. I stood there crying in the middle of the sidewalk, not from joy, but from the sheer absurdity of it. All in years of carefully crafted invisibility obliterated in an instant. People flowed around me like I was a rock in a river, completely unaware that the girl they were brushing past was the same one glowing above them. For the first time, I understood the difference between being looked at and being seen. The billboard demanded attention, but no one really knew me. Yet in that paradox came an unexpected freedom. If their perception was meaningless, then so was their disregard. I touched my own reflection in a store window, half expecting it to disappear like it always had before, but it stayed solid, undeniable. When the light changed and the crowd carried me forward, I realized something terrifying and beautiful. The world hadn't changed its mind about me. I'd changed my mind about myself. That glowing image wasn't permission to exist. It was proof. I always had. The billboard would eventually come down, but the shift inside me felt permanent. I walked away, not feeling famous, but finally real. The reactions that changed nothing. The texts started pouring in within minutes of the billboard going live. Screenshots with frantic question marks, all caps demands for explanations, sudden declarations of pride from people who'd never noticed my absence. Each notification buzzed like an alarm clock trying to wake me from a dream. Their shock felt performative, as if my visibility was an act of betrayal against the narrative they'd crafted about me. "Why didn't you tell us?" they asked, as if they would have listened. The same people who'd talked over me for years now wanted exclusive rights to my story. Their sudden interest carried an unspoken accusation. How dare I become someone worth noticing without their permission? I scrolled through years of unanswered messages in our chats, the one-sided conversations where my words had dissolved into the digital void. Now they expected me to perform gratitude for attention that should have been basic human decency all along. The cruelest messages weren't the jealous ones, but the patronizing, "We always knew you had it in you." Revisionist history, erasing all those years they'd treated my ambition as cute but unrealistic. I watched my phone light up with invitations to coffee dates and catch-up sessions from people who'd never had time before, their sudden curiosity smelling distinctly like opportunism. The billboard hadn't changed me. It had changed how they saw their own reflection in my success. That's when I understood the most liberating truth. Their validation came too late to matter. The person who needed their approval had disappeared somewhere between the ignored submissions and the quiet determination to keep creating anyway. Their belated cheers couldn't rewrite history, only highlight how little their opinion truly affected my journey. I responded with polite detachment, protecting the quiet victory they would never fully grasp. I hadn't done this for them. The billboard was never the finish line. It was just the first time my light was bright enough to hurt their eyes. The realization. Standing there in the glow of that massive billboard, surrounded by strangers yet profoundly alone, the truth hit me with staggering clarity. The spotlight didn't make me valuable. It simply revealed what had always been there. All those years of shrinking myself had been based on a lie, the cruel myth that visibility equals worth. The faces upturned toward my image didn't hold the answers I'd spent my life searching for in others' eyes. The real revelation wasn't that the world finally saw me, but that I no longer needed them to in order to know I existed. That glowing advertisement would eventually fade, but the unshakable certainty now rooted in my bones was permanent. I thought being chosen would heal the old wounds, but it simply showed me they'd already scarred over without me noticing. The people suddenly claiming they always believed in me couldn't give me anything more precious than what I'd already given myself, the quiet conviction to keep creating even when no one was watching. The billboard wasn't the destination. It was just a spectacular rest stop on a much longer journey. As I walked away from Times Square that night, something fundamental had shifted. Not in how the world perceived me, but in how I perceived myself. The little girl who burned her notebooks, the teenager who ate lunch alone, the young woman who submitted her work with "probably not your type." They weren't failures waiting for success. They were the necessary foundation of someone learning her own strength. The greatest freedom wasn't being seen by millions. It was realizing my worth had never been contingent on their gaze at all. The billboard would come down, the attention would fade, but the most important lesson remained. You don't become real when others finally notice you. You were real all along. That night, I rewrote every "I'm not enough" I'd ever believed. The world didn't give me value, I did. The billboard just forced them to notice. This isn't a story about fame. It's about the quiet rebellion of refusing to disappear. You don't need a Times Square billboard to prove you matter. But sometimes life hands you a megaphone to scream what you already knew. Invisibility is a lie. You were never small. The right people just hadn't learned to look. If you take anything from this, let it be this. Stop waiting for someone to give you light. You've been the light all along. The world doesn't decide when you shine. You do. If this resonated with you, hit like. It tells YouTube this. Story matters. And subscribe for more journeys from unseen to unstoppable. See you in the next one. The most dangerous thing we do is confuse being unnoticed with being unimportant. You are both, seen and essential, even if the mirror hasn't caught up yet.